Hello, I'm Deborah Hills from Queen Mary's School of the Arts. Welcome to Get Spotted. This podcast series is part of our QM Elevate programme, designed to help you build confidence and develop the communication skills you need to succeed at university and in your future career. In each episode, we'll talk with students, alumni and academics from different disciplines and see how engaging with assignments can be a game changer, helping you refine your communication skills and stand out in the workplace. Let's get started. This episode is law.
I think a key skill that I learned from street law that I didn't think I'd learn was being able to adapt the way I spoke to different audiences and being able to communicate with different people.
Okay, so this episode of the Get Spotted podcast is with the law department and we're looking specifically at street law. So let's meet our participants. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Ayah. I'm a final year law student and I've just finished my exam, so yeah.
My name is Rowan. I graduated last year and I now work at the Constitution Unit at UCL.
And you're going to tell us a bit more about that later, yeah?
And I'm Fran Ridout. I am the director of the Queen Mary Legal Advice Centre.
Excellent, thank you. So let's start with Fran. And Fran, tell us about this module, street law, and about the communicative practices and what you hope to develop in the students.
Yeah, street law is completely different from anything else in the law school, really. And it's important to remember that when we talk about law and how the community engage with law, it's not just about individuals receiving advice for specific problems or generating statutes. There's a big part about public legal education. So everyone is bound by the law, but not everyone knows what the law is. And there's a level of unfairness about that. There's a level which stops access to justice happening. So street law comes in as a subsection of public legal education. So how do you improve public legal literacy? It's really a device by which people can learn more about the law and feel empowered to act under the law and to engage with it. So the module's 30 credits. It's an elective module, so second or third year undergraduate law students can pick it. This year we had 20 students on it, which was brilliant. And it's all about teamwork, collaboration, and getting to know each other to produce better educational results at the end of it.
Excellent. We're going to find out more about what goes on in there. Ayah, tell us why you chose this.
So initially I enrolled into the module because I realised that I did struggle with presentation skills. And specifically, I didn't enjoy public speaking. And to challenge myself, I thought it'd be best to enrol myself in Fran's module. Because I knew that public speaking was at the forefront and collaborating with other team members was also really important. So it was more about challenging myself and putting myself through this uncomfortable module in hopes that I could improve my skills.
That's so brave.
Yeah, I guess I...
What about you, Rowan?
So I had previously been part of the support team at the Legal Advice Centre.
Tell us what that is. Tell us what that means.
Yeah, so the support team at the Legal Advice Centre essentially helped the staff to run the administration side of the centre. So looking at things like booking appointments and generally sort of talking to the general public about whether the Legal Advice Centre can help them. And I'd previously been involved with that. But I was also sort of very passionate generally about public legal education and sort of public education generally. And so this module really seemed like a really great fit, sort of loving the Legal Advice Centre and loving public education.
Right, great, thank you. So we're going to think about the tasks that they had to do. I know it's a 2-semester course, but we're going to talk about second semester. Tell us what they had to do and why, Fran, and then we'll find out how it went.
So interestingly, actually, it was a 1-semester course and Rowan did it, and I rewrote it to be a 2-semester course when Ayah did it. So students learn about street law, what it is, and the only way to learn about it is by doing it and pretending to be a participant in a street law session and learning some of the theory behind it. And while they're doing that, they do 3 street law activities throughout the year. So in this particular year, I'm sure I will give us a bit more detail in due course, but the students did some work with the National Justice Museum, which is based at the Royal Courts of Justice, helping run interactive mock trials in the courtrooms for school kids. And then they were divided into different groups of 3, and each group of 3 had a slightly different activity that they did. So some were with schools, some were at care homes or community groups or local charities.
So this is so different from when you imagine studying law, that you're studying statutes and you're studying kind of hard facts and everything. Ayah, tell us about what you did and how it went. And
Of course, so I think this module is completely different. My entire undergraduate journey, I've just learned through academics, so statutes, case law, and I've never really had the opportunity to immerse myself in the law. So for example, with the National Justice Museum, we ran mock trials, and I felt that I learned so much from just helping other participants. And it really, again, showed me the importance of public legal education.
tell us what you did when you said I helped run it. What did you do?
So essentially, we were volunteers, and we were helping the students run the mock trial. So it was assisting whether the prosecution or the defence, teaching them about their roles, helping guide them. So just giving them the prompts so that they can better understand the legal system. I mean, it was really enjoyable and also challenging for me. So I thought it was quite an amazing opportunity.
Excellent. Did you do something similar? Well, tell us about one of yours.
So we did 3 activities. One of them was we went into a school, we were beamed in because it was during COVID, and we spoke to them about sharing and publishing images to embarrass and the law around that. We also spoke to another group of students about copyright and the law around that. We used a card game to do that, and then we created a YouTube video all about stop and search and the law around that.
Right, so you went into the school. Was it the same class each time?
No, different class. So the first one when we were talking about spite, they were year 9, I think.
Which is how old?
Which is about 14, I think.
Right.
But then the second group were, I think, 17, and they were law students, so they had specifically chosen the topic. So it's quite a different audience from sort of more general younger kids to almost adults who had chosen to study law.
So how do you change what you say and is the content the same, or is it the message different?
No, absolutely not. So you have to obviously adapt what you do. So obviously with the 14-year-olds, you mainly focus sort of on the message more. You wouldn't show up reams of sort of legalese. You wouldn't send them sort of what does the actual law say, because that's just not useful. But you sort of send the message what is illegal, what actions are illegal. But with the 17-year-olds, you can be a little bit more technical. You still have to, they're not university students, but you can be a little bit more technical in the sense that you can talk to them about. You talk to them about sort of the detailed parts of copyright law.
Okay. So can you tell us about your 3 tasks?
Of course, so mine were all very different. So my first, again, was to the National Justice Museum. So I specifically did 2 for, I think, year 6s, so really young children. The second one I did to parents, so much older. And then my final project, I delivered it to 16 to 18-year-olds. So I had sort of a mix of audiences, and it was really interesting to see how they all reacted.
And how did you change your message? Like with parents, for example, and they're older than you, was that intimidating or?
So the parents was quite different, again, because they are older than me. I perceived it as quite weird and challenging for me to teach them something because, again, they're older than me. It's always the perception that they're going to teach me something. So it was quite challenging, quite different. But the parents were quite receptive and they were eager to learn. So it was quite nice. And
so how did you change your message? Like when Rowan was talking about using more technical legalese with the older students, was there something you did to engage those parents?
So with the parents, they came from diverse backgrounds. Specifically, we had a few participants who couldn't really speak English well. So for us, I took a similar approach to Rowan by simplifying the language and the concepts and trying to make the language really accessible so they could really understand the meaning behind the law and the meaning and importance of the topic rather than understanding all the different legal requirements.
And I remember you saying when I talked to you beforehand that when you started simplifying things, it gave you a deeper understanding of the law. Is that right?
No, yeah. So even by translating these complex legal concepts, I felt that I understood it more because even initially when designing the street law sessions, for example, we designed one on the Online Safety Act. I didn't understand it, but by teaching these different audiences, I got to understand the law more.
And you understand the impact because it's to real people.
Yeah.
And is that the same for you, Rowan?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Tell us about your job because it connects to this,
of course,
doesn't it?
Yeah. So my job now, I'm the impact researcher at the Constitution Unit at UCL. So we are part of the university and I work very closely with academics, but we're a very outward-facing part of the university. And it's my job to help with our outward-facing things. And so we will write sort of academic reports, but we need to sort of translate those into something that policymakers might understand or journalists might understand or sort of the public as a whole might understand. And so again, it's about adapting. It's about not losing sort of the substance. It's about not simplifying down too much, but it's about really adapting the language that you use to make it easily accessible to sort of your key audience and also a more broader audience than maybe academic publications generally have.
Can you tell us an example of anything?
Yeah, so today we published the first part of 2 of blogs by our deputy director, who's a professor at UCL, and they were all about how the change in the voting system used in the local elections for mayors and police and crime commissioners that happened in 2022 changed the results of these elections and changed them in the Conservative Party's favour. And so the actual analysis of this that Alan Reddick, who's the professor and our deputy director, did was very technical, had to be at first glance. But then we decided to post this on our blog. And so that had to sort of be written in a much more accessible way. And then yesterday I was speaking to some journalists about this, and it was really about boiling it down to the key bullet points and working out what is the key message here, how can we put it simply and accessibly, but also how can we sort of make sure we're not over dramatising anything, make sure we do get the tone just right. And please, we did this. We got some coverage this morning, even though I'll date this now and say the general election was announced yesterday evening.
Thank you.
And so we got a bit, unfortunately, our publication plans for this got a bit complicated. But we did get some coverage, and we might get some more coverage. But it was all about, so that's the sort of thing that I do quite a lot. It's all about sort of adapting for different audiences and taking some sort of, but also not losing the nuance, because that's really important with academic publications. You know, we're not here to make a splash. We're here to inform policymakers, the media, the public as a whole.
But it's more than inform, isn't it? It's engage and make them care.
Exactly, yes. Engagement is really important, really big part of my job.
Yeah, fun, yeah.
I think one of the things that both of them have actually described really nicely is around the methodology of street law. So if you take street law down to its heart, it's a way of teaching. It's a teaching methodology. You know, how do you make things fun and interactive? How do you bring joy to help convey a message about the law? And then you take a step back from it and think, well, it's not just about conveying what the law is. There's a message about empowerment and engagement within that. And I think you've both described that really nicely, actually, in your examples. And Rowan's still doing it today in his job. Yeah.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you. And I want to move to the first assessment that you did. Can you tell us, I'll ask Ayah because it's fresh in her mind. Tell us what you had to do, because I remember you saying again, like, oh, I was a bit scared about it. So tell us all about it and how you felt.
So we had 2 different assessments. We had the first was the 25-minute mock presentation.
Yeah, tell us about this.
So essentially we had to design a street law session that we deliver to Fran and another assessor to make sure that we really understood what street law was and the message. But in this, I had to sort of deliver a 25-minute presentation by myself. And to me, speaking for 25 minutes, I don't enjoy that. I don't want to do that. So even initially when I was signing up to the module, all I'd ever done was written exams or maybe the most a group presentation. So I'd never done a presentation alone. So it was quite daunting. But after completing the 25-minute presentation, I thought this was quite easy. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
What was the middle bit then? Because there's the I was daunted, and then there's I did it. So how did you get yourself there?
So it was just a lot of presentation and also speaking to my other street law colleagues. We were all feeling nervous. It was a normal feeling to feel, and I just had to realise that everyone else is feeling anxious. The way I'm feeling is completely normal. And that sort of helped soothe me. So when I entered the presentation, whilst I did have those initial nerves, it just faded throughout the 25 minutes, and I felt that I could really deliver the presentation the way I wanted.
Did you in some way enjoy it? That's too strong. Are you proud of it?
No, I definitely am proud. I left feeling really satisfied.
Great.
Because I thought the worst. I'd leave there crying, but I was quite satisfied with my performance in the assessment.
Excellent. And tell us about yours. I seem to remember it involved a board game?
Yes. So my first presentation of the street law activity, I created this board game all about essentially how to make something law or how to have an influence from sort of a very grassroots level. But we delivered ours slightly differently to you. So we were during COVID, And so we had to deliver it online, which meant I actually ended up setting up 2 cameras, one sort of pointing at me and one sort of pointing at this board game. But again, it's the same thing of sort of talking for 25 minutes, trying to fit a lot in because you were trying to explain the board game, you were trying to sort of hit the more legal points, you were trying to hit all sort of the criteria that had been set out. And so there's sort of a lot to deal with, and a lot of planning had to go into that and a lot of practicing beforehand. But it was really quite fun. I really enjoyed creating the board game.
I was going to say, what was the board game about?
So the board game was about moving from a very grassroots level, from essentially having just an idea. You start with an idea, and the end point was it becoming a law, which of course isn't always how ideas come into practice. But it was all about sort of how do you influence people at different layers of government. So you sort of started with the council, and then you sort of moved on, and I think there was sort of a more, if it was based around London, so then you sort of had the Mayor of London, and then it was all about the House of Commons and the House of Lords, and you moved forward depending on sort of what methods you used. So, you know, if you can get the attention of the Prime Minister, you move forward, say, 5 places. Of course, it was a very simplified version of how influence actually happens, but hopefully it's sort of a good indication.
You can see, Deborah, how if you play that with a group of young people who might not be interested in voting or see the value of it, that is so much more powerful as a method of communication than standing with a boring PowerPoint and talking at people, you know. And to this day, when you talk about interactive teaching methodology with most people who haven't been engaged in street law, they think, you know, a PowerPoint on the law and then doing a few scenario examples where you test the law with the scenario is interactive teaching. And I'm like, that is not interactive teaching. You know, we regularly highlight when we're working with students and teaching them this methodology about turning it upside down. So students will quite often start by saying what the law is and then doing something fun. And we say, no, turn it upside down. Do something fun, see what people's views are, what they think the law should be in these circumstances or playing that game, and then tell them how it happens at the last bit, and they'll be far more engaged in that as a pedagogy.
And that is, when you think about arguments, you can either state your argument and then give your reasoning, or you start with a scenario and you show what's going on there, and then it leads to the reasoning, and then that's the more persuasive way of arguing. So absolutely, this is going to be more memorable, and yeah, it's amazing. I love the sound of that. And so that was the first assessment. The second one, we talked about you going into classrooms and to different environments and delivering sessions, and then you had to write about it. And I suppose you weren't being marked on what you actually did in those classrooms. You were being marked on the reflective essay. And I know Ayah hasn't been marked yet, but she's going to tell us a little bit about what she wrote. Just first of all, it's a reflective essay, is that right? Or is it reflective report? Reflective essay?
No, it's a reflective essay.
Right, okay. And tell us about had you written a reflective essay before?
Again, no. So my entire undergraduate degree, I was just writing essays based on land law or politics. So I've never really written a reflective. I don't think I've ever written a reflective essay, actually. So it was quite different, and I didn't know how to approach it. And I think half of our class were begging you for a structure or a model essay to help us with this reflection, because again, none of us had ever done it. But it was really different, and even when writing it, I was struggling initially because I don't know what to write in a reflective essay, but I had to really sort of step back and focus on sort of themes. What is it that I learned, and what skills did I feel that the sessions developed, and then just write about that honestly, and even if that meant being negative at times and being truthful, and not really bigging up a street law. That's what I had to do.
And did it help you? Do you feel like doing a reflective essay has helped you be a more reflective law practitioner? Or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no. I'd say definitely, because again, it allowed me to see sort of the change in myself. So even from the first street law session to the last, I was able to see a massive transformation, and sort of still see areas for improvement and what it is that I can build on.
So interesting. Anwar, tell us about your reflection.
Yeah, so it was a similar sort of thing. So I had never, you use the word reflection, but you sort of never engage with it as a sort of process or academically. I'd never done that before. And at first that seems a little bit strange. But actually, the whole process of that is actually a really useful thing. And it's something that, by looking at it from a more academic, as a process perspective, it means that when you reflect in more day-to-day life, or indeed I reflect in my job now, or, in my life now, you do so in sort of a more productive way. And, things go wrong throughout life. And reflection does make you sort of more resilient in the sense that you can look back, how would I do it differently? It's not the end of the world if everything's not perfect. And you don't have to write an essay, obviously, when you do this, but you can sort of think about it. You can do it in meetings, you do it in your head, you do it in conversations, but it is a useful issue, and you can make notes and you can write an essay if you want to. But it's definitely a useful sort of skill to have that I think, perhaps like you, sort of you don't appreciate at first, you go, but then you realise actually it's a really useful skill.
I mean, students go through all these emotions over the years where they first of all think, oh, this must be a really easy assessment. Then they realise actually reflection's really hard to do properly. Then, as Ayah said, they have a total meltdown, beg for a structure, which I absolutely flat out refuse to do because it's an individual thing. And one of the things we really try to encourage them to do is to reflect with each other throughout the year and keep that spontaneous note of what they're feeling, so they can draw together and find what the common themes are. So maybe imposter syndrome has been a theme for that particular person. And so I try to get them to think about having maybe up to 3 themes in their essays that they can draw on. But the number of people that think they reflect that actually probably just mull things over. And if you've got the skill of reflection, like Rowan says, you're much more likely to then go into practice and be a lifelong learner and be curious and be hungry to develop because you've had that looking back. And it's deep learning, you know, it's surface learning to memorise.
And you're going to get better and better. And I think that, I think it was me and Rowan were talking about this, about that when you have a disaster. Do you remember was talking about that when something bad happens, but your reflection on that can be so much deeper, like you learn more from having a bad experience rather than just kind of burying your head and going, you can get something out of it.
Yeah, if something goes wrong, hopefully using reflection, you can sort of work out how it cannot go wrong again in the future. And you can sort of work it through, and that will hopefully make you also feel better about it.
Mm-hmm. And you realise it was an act, not you.
And this kind of links into the camaraderie, I think, on the module, and that you need in any street law, whether you're doing it as an extracurricular project or on a module, because to go through 3 difficult community experiences that are challenging, even if they go really well, to go through, you know, doing a different type of assessment in the presentation pitch, and to go through reflection, you need to have friends on the module. You need to have that trust within your peer group that you can draw on.
And why do you want them to have trust with their peer group? How will that make them better lawyers in the future?
I mean, teamwork is the number one skill any law firm is looking for. I think that's in all the tables you ever see. So, you know, what do we do on traditional law degrees usually? Teach them individually. And it's about helping the students to learn that they don't just learn from the teacher at the front of the class. They learn from themselves and they learn from each other and sharing experiences. And that will see their learning go up exponentially. And, you know, law school is a competitive environment. There's just an undertone of it wherever you walk. You have to break down that barrier day one on the module. And you know, the group this year were phenomenal at doing that. Your group, you know, we had students going out to dinner with each other. We had students cooking for another student who'd hurt her foot, you know, like that. If you've got that camaraderie, there's a resilience where they can support each other when things don't go to plan. And they have to have that with each other because there's still a hierarchical distance with a street law teacher. There's still a reluctance sometimes to go.
Mm-hmm. And so you've told us a bit about your job now. What, from street law, which skills or communicative skills, either written or spoken, really resonate with you that you know you're using now?
Absolutely. I mean, the skills that I learned in street law, I use pretty much every day in my job. Sort of those communication skills with the outside world that I've already sort of spoken about, sort of simplifying academic work, but also sort of those teamwork skills. And as Fran said, law firms value this. Everybody values this.
Yeah.
Sort of you have to talk and you have to email and have meetings with and present even in meetings, even if it's not technically presenting, it's certainly sharing an idea. And you have to use those skills all the time in the workplace, and you generally don't during a law degree. And so, yeah, absolutely built on those. Yeah.
Brilliant. And do you feel different now that you're at the end of the street law experience compared to at the beginning?
Definitely. In the beginning, I was feeling quite anxious, but after street law, I feel very satisfied with myself, very happy, and very content with the skills that I've developed. And just going on what Rowan said, I think a key skill that I learned from street law that I didn't think I'd learn was being able to adapt the way I spoke to like different audiences, and being able to communicate with different people.
Which is just such, I mean, it's in the graduate attributes, which we'll just name check the graduate attributes. But I mean, it's just important, not just for employability, is it? It's for personal growth and happiness and transformation. And yeah, I think street law just sounds amazing. Anything else we should add before we finish on our street law podcast?
The whole concept of street law is so important in the world. You know, we talk about it in law, but you could easily see how the street law methodology could be used in all other different disciplines, in all different professions, and the techniques, and especially those communication techniques, can be used. You know, how do you empower people, give people their value and their worth when you're working with a community group? It doesn't have to be a community group. You could go on to be a train the trainer or something like that. You know, how do you work with people, or just managing a team to help them feel valued? So I think it is about communication, but linked to communication are the values that the street law practice has as well.
So, I mean, you can't separate them, can you? No. You're thinking about empathy, basically, and ability to, see things from other perspectives than your own, to listen. I think listening was probably a key thing.
Absolutely. Listening is a really important skill, sort of learning that other people could really add to your ideas, and you can build things together, and you can go, oh, I like this, build. And, you know, you don't always get that during your degree, but sort of absolutely those listening skills are really important that you develop during this, and you use them every day. You don't just use them during work, you use them every day.
Absolutely. And then the other thing that I know we've talked about, but I just want to go back to the last thing is, and it's connected to this, being a human, is knowing when you went wrong and admitting to yourself you went wrong, and not worrying about it, but thinking about it and thinking about how you can do something differently the next time. It's about creativity and self-understanding. And we've got to teach students how to behave when something goes wrong, because they're going to make mistakes in the workplace, you know. How do you talk about it, own up to it, try to rectify it, have resilience, learn from it for the future? You know, there's just everyday examples. And I mean, I teach storytelling, and this idea of telling a story will always grab somebody, but having the bits where things went wrong is really interesting in a story, isn't it? So it's good to have these, when you develop your resilience, when you have these things, well, I went into the classroom and they didn't listen to me, and that's a really important thing to remember.
And there's a part as well about unconscious bias that comes through. You know, a lot of the groups, when they were working with the National Justice Museum and the students coming through, were shocked that either the group were well behaved when they were expecting them not to be, or the other way around, and then looking at themselves and, okay, why did I think that was the case?
Yeah, fascinating. One very last thing before we stop. Rowan, you made a video as well. We're going to link the video underneath our podcast. And you made a video to explain something to students. Tell us a little bit about that and whether or not you're using those skills now.
Yeah, so the video was all about stop and search, and we posted it on YouTube for anyone who sort of finds it useful. And I think the Open University has found it useful.
They emailed us to ask if they could include it in part of their degree programme. We were like, yeah, of course. Well, Fro's consents, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But no, those still. So that particular video meant that we essentially had to learn, how do you make a video? And we learned how to write a script, and then I did the editing for it. And so sort of learning how to edit a video, those technical skills, which again are really important. And again, sort of you learn the very basics, but it's really important to learn the very basics of sort of these technical skills, these different methods of communicating. That was, so absolutely use those skills all the time.
Amazing, isn't it? Yeah. Anything else we should say, Ayah, before we finish?
I'd say street law, I think it has this dual benefit. Not only are you helping yourself, but you're helping other people. So it's been an impactful module, and I'd encourage any law student to enroll.
Absolutely. And you, Rowan, anything?
Absolutely. Encourage every student to do it. But no, I really loved it. Easily one of my favourite modules that I did throughout my 4 years at university. Really loved it, and pleased to be talking about it again.
I promise I didn't pay them to say that.
Thank you so much for this. It's just been really, really useful. And I think a lot of things that we've got out of here, we talk about in other podcasts as well. So thank you very much for your time. You'll find all of the links discussed on the Get Spotted webpage. And if you want help in developing your communication skills, why not sign up for the Communicate with Impact Masterclass or one of our other modules, free to all QM students. Details on the QM Elevate webpage.